I love this quote, and I'm sure you've heard it before, some of you, but if we start with filling time, we get activities. And so many people we know with disability, their lives are full of activities and they're prolonged often. You know, how often do you see that someone's got go into the shops for a coffee, and that's a good part of the day. So we see these activities, but if we start with filling roles, time takes care of itself. But again, just to reiterate why a micro enterprise, so this was the MEP's purpose back 10 years ago was to support people with significant disabilities to pursue their individual careers by inspiring the possibility and assisting them to establish their own micro enterprise. And we know that this is important because there's a real need to increase opportunities for adults who live with a significant disability to engage in meaningful and valued alternatives to day programs and being bored and lacking purpose. So remember, you know, when we look at the value of work, we talked about purpose and feeling inspired. So rather it's to enjoy and improve quality of life for economic participation, making a contribution and social inclusion. So actually that's one word that we didn't come up with on our list, and it wasn't the other one. Contribution is a big part of why people, you know, enjoy work, whether it's paid or unpaid. It's feeling like we're knowing that we're contributing to something. We're not just sort of marking time. So the MEP that was devised 10 years ago, just to give you a bit of understanding, this is the framework and the principles, and these are all SRV or social role valorisation principles. Now, it's interesting because this was before NDIS, but they're the words and categories that we can link very closely. So it's important. So if we talk about individuality, so supporting people to discover their passions, interests and skills, structuring a micro-enterprise based on their unique situation and needs. Now, when I talked about customised employment and why I believe it's so successful is when we start with the person, we really can craft everything about what's right for them. So, you know, you think about work, so what's a person going to do? So we can think about what are those passions and interests and skills, the what. When are they going to do it? Okay, well we know that so-and-so operates best in the morning. Or this person, I mentioned Paul before, he actually with his disability and his medical needs, he took till lunchtime to really be ready to be able to do anything. So his structure was afternoon. So the when is a really important thing, you know, really looking at when does someone, I was talking in the break and one of the mothers said that school starts too late for her daughter. She's up early, you know, well with work, you can start work early if that's something, you know, capture those good times. So who do you do it with? You know, that person chooses who they work with and alongside, and certainly under the micro-enterprise project model, we everybody that has an enterprise has a PA or a personal assistant to support them, and they choose that person. I don't think there's anything more person-centred than being able to customise a job around you. So the individuality and really taking someone's uniqueness and looking at that and developing a product or a service from that is so great. Relationships, you know, I mentioned people will say, oh, they'll be lonely. You know, they got to go to this day options program with their friends. I'm sure we've heard that one too. Well, you know, just because you've got a disability and that person's got a disability doesn't mean you're going to be friends. So relationships are way beyond just clumping people together. So this is all based on one person at a time. This is not about bringing people together. Now, in your own space, you can do what you like. You know the person you're here for, it's your choice. So we're not going to say no, don't do it. But if you were coming to South Australia and using the MEP framework, it would only ever be one person at a time. People are often keen to bring people together, but what we've found through that is if, you know, so-and-so's best friend, they both want to have this dog walking business together, you do that. If that's what you think is right, go ahead, but be aware that there will be compromises made, because when two people come together, you compromise. So, you know, John might want to start the dog walking business before work, but Mary might want to do it afterwards. Straight away, you've got compromise. So just I've actually jumped around, I'm not even on relationships, but I'm just thinking it's really important. So I came to that by saying about relationships and being lonely. When there's genuine relationships in community, you won't be lonely. A micro-enterprise owner will be a consumer as well as a seller. They'll buy their products. So there is a level of safeguarding through relationships. And so these 5 areas of principles. As I said, this is not coincidental. This is very much about the key points that underpin some of these thinking about relationships. The valued roles, as I said, when we talked about before, when you have a valued role, you're not just being seen, you're contributing, you're connecting, and we talk about highly valued roles. So always thinking the highest value. So work is a highly valued role. It's relatable. We said at the video, one of the first things people say to you when you meet someone new is, what do you do? When you can turn around and say, I run my own micro-enterprise, or I'm studying, or whatever, it's a relatable, valued role, and it's an important one. I've seen it plenty of times when people say, I mainly stay at home and I've got a support worker that comes in. It's sort of a conversation killer in lots of ways. So, it's great to have an answer, isn't it, to these highly valued roles. And for people to genuinely know that they are contributing to the economic climate of society. So competencies, really acknowledging that everybody has skills and interests and things to offer and that they can be built on. Again, when Jocelyn got that call from this top winery in the Barossa Valley asking for a product, that's a pretty big deal. That's showing that she is not having a tokenistic business. There's something really genuine about her product. It was actually pretty cool for her to be able to say, "I'm sorry, I'm too busy." So, I know my son Tom, he's declining people at the moment, and he's actually cherry picking. In the early days, he would do everything and go everywhere, and now he's saying, "You're out of my zone," or "I don't actually want to touch that ivy. I'd rather just do the lawn." So, that's a pretty cool thing too. And feeling competent and being good at what we do, it changes the way we're perceived and the way we can contribute in society. And this social capital, community participation and inclusion, that's what we were talking about as well, is being a customer, being someone that you're not just visible. It's not enough just to be visible. You actually have to be contributing in society to have these relationships and for community in our own way. Enterprise owners are doing their own bit as role models to show people that people with disability are competent and can work. And so they're paving the way. And we've talked earlier about people who've gone before us, and these enterprise owners, really acknowledge their contribution to our project because they show people, what is possible. You said it before, seeing is believing. So often these examples are enough to get someone to say, and that's what Adrian said. He saw an example and he went, "Oh, I could do that." And that's what we often see. So I'm going to show you a video now.
Leaving school and planning for the future should be an exciting time where a person has the opportunity to follow a career path that excites and motivates them. Traditionally, however, people with disability have only been offered limited choices such as day option programs and sheltered workshops, which for many is not fulfilling. Microenterprise is an alternative career pathway for people with disability to consider, which is tailored to suit each individual person's skills, interests, talents and capacity for work. It is a form of customised employment as unique as the person.
So I'm Nonnie, I'm Bailey's mum. He's 18 now, so we've had a long journey of ups and downs, and as a parent you have all these dreams and things for your child, and then they get diagnosed with a disability and you're told, they may not talk, they may not this, and everything's they might not. And to have people saying, he could do this, he could do that, it's so positive and so encouraging, and it just really gives you an excitement about his future, I guess.
When Bailey first came to our school, we weren't really sure what that would look like by the end of year 12, but luckily this year we've been able to really make a plan and help the family.
Short-term hopes for Bailey would be to finish school well and to get him doing something he loves, keep him feeling like what he's doing is meaningful and valuable, not just filling in time and whatever. And I guess long-term, I want him to feel like he's got purpose in life, he's got value.
It's really important that schools start to put things in place in conjunction with families early on in the student's school life. So year 10, year 11, you need to be having those conversations with schools and parents and other organisations to really find a good fit for the students. We've seen Bailey, particularly over this year, as he's started the discovery process towards the second half of this year, he's come out of his shell and we have been able to pinpoint a little bit better what he is really interested in.
So before, we really didn't have much idea on what Bailey would do. When you're in survival mode, you kind of put things off. So we'd gotten to the point where we were like, right, we've got to do something about this. When school introduced us to the Micro Enterprise project, we just went, oh, that's for us.
I think that microenterprise is a good option for students with diverse learning needs because it looks at the person as an individual and where they could contribute and have meaning within society.
Bailey's been through mainstream school since reception or even kindy, and I think microenterprise is a good follow-on from that because he'll be still meeting people and out in the community, and that gives him the motivation because it's this is mine, this is what I want to do. So good that he could start the process while he's still at school. You know, hopefully then it's a bit more of a smooth transition out of school and we're not sort of sitting around for a while thinking, what's next?
Through this whole process, it's been really important as a school that we work in conjunction with the family for Bailey and also with the microenterprise consultant. It's actually been an easy process. We've opened our doors and allowed them to come in and spend time with Bailey in the school, and they've really helped us in terms of discovering what might suit him next year and what might fit with what it is that he wants to do after he finishes school.
So the consultant has just supported us, and I feel like she's sort of opened up the world a little bit, and it's actually been really exciting because we're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, or I haven't thought of this. And watching Bailey go through the process and you know, chatting with him about what might happen next, it's really exciting.
I think parents can have high expectations for their student, for their child.
The best advice that I can give is that you guys know your child best. You know what their interests are, what their challenges are, and what their complexities are. So use this opportunity of them approaching their end of school years as a chance to discover what might be possible for them outside of school.
It is really important as an educator to find out what is out there for students and for all students, and to relay that information to parents so that students can leave here at the end of year 12 or leave their school at the end of year 12 and be on a pathway of discovery that's going to be meaningful for them.
So what's exciting about where we are now is, I guess, having like the world opened up to him. Like there's not just one path that you're going to follow. He can take it as far as he wants to take it. There's no limit on him. No one's saying, well, this is where we stop. It can go as far as he wants to take it, which is really exciting.
So that was, as I said, we did that filming about this time last year, and you know, it's lovely to say that Bailey's he's working in his micro enterprise. So, and you know, it's fantastic. Bailey's working a couple of days in his micro enterprise. They've employed a PA. He has, as you can tell, I've got no technology sort of knowledge. He is just an absolute whiz, and he showed me he loves music and he loves movies, and he creates these characters, and then he superimposes the words from songs and things into these characters and does all this amazing stuff. I'm not quite sure where his micro enterprise is going at the moment, but he goes to work, he dresses up, goes into an office, and he works, and you know, his mum is just over the moon with how it's going. And you know, this is a person that could have been seen again as not suitable for work. So what happened is his teacher Lainey, who was in that she came along to an information session like this. She then rang me and said, could you come to our school? We've got a few families that might be interested, and Noni, his mum, came along, and that's how that went. So sometimes timing, but having educators, and it's great to see we've got some today. Families look to educators for information. They look to them for ideas and hope, and so it's fantastic that this can be in conjunction with the school to work program, because and I'm saying from personal experience, you look often to where your child is spending a lot of time at school, and to people they're with, and saying, well, what's out there? So again, knowing more and sharing this on, please all share our resources far and wide, because they're out there, and it might be that it just hits a person at the right time. So now I'm going to get into, as you can tell, that having a consultant, if you're in South Australia, can be really beneficial, but I'm acknowledging we don't have that. Though there are organisations here that I found out, and you'd be best to tell me as well, but there are some people. But these are some of the things that we would encourage you if you're considering a micro enterprise. So, and people doing discovery this afternoon, we're going to go into each of these sections in a lot more detail, all right? But I'll just touch on them now. So, you know, what are the experiences of a person's day or their life that needs to change? So, if you know someone that's already left school and is home, and their life is full of activities, what are those activities that you might want to consider, or they might want to change? You know, are their activities being stretched so that it's filling the day? Are they doing a lot of allied health things because it's something to do? You know, they might be some of the things that want to change. Could it be that whatever they're doing, they're actually just bored in and they're not being extended? You know, those are the sort of things we're looking for. What can be changed, but also at the same time, what wouldn't you not want to change? They might already have a fantastic connection or an activity that is giving them a lot of relationships and opportunities. So look at the non-negotiables, and again, we're going to talk about that more later this afternoon. But the other things, the gifts, talents, passions and interests. It's really sad that so often families will come post-school and have that question and feel they can't answer it. They've heard so much deficit language, what can't be done, what they're not doing, that to think about someone with skills and interests can be a hard question. And so it can take time to really start thinking deeply. There's often surface thoughts, and some of those are great, and they certainly would be considered, but thinking deeply about a person. What are the things that spark them up? What makes them suddenly interested? You know, considering these sorts of things. We also talk about who's in the person's network, who's in their, what we say, their informal space, people who are paid to be in their life. Who's around them that might be someone that could be a supporter, or a supporter for you if you're a family member, to have an extra person alongside you to work through. So thinking about the people in their family space. And again, I've had quite a few families over the last few years say to me, there's no one, it's just me and my son, and we've got no one. And that's a really sad thing to hear, but you know what, when we go a little bit further, we can find ways of finding people. It might be that you go through Woolies and there's a particular checkout person who always asks the person, how are you today? You know, they're the one that show a little bit of interest. You might, like Mandy, you might have a hairdresser that knows a lot about you and remembers you. So we look for those connections and use those. Deeping. I say the consultant's role and our role is we're detectives, really. We're looking for those little signs. So we talk about also what personal resources does the person have. Do they have a space or a place to work? Is there a spare bedroom in the home? Is there a garage to store equipment? Or do we have to find somewhere because it's not possible? Maybe they're in supported accommodation and they can't have their workplace there. So, you know, these are the sort of considerations. We've got to look at them. We've got to be realistic as well. What is the realistic side of this? Equipment for people to assist the startup funds. I talked about Fleur. She started with $50. That was her budget, and she bought 10 IKEA vases. Then we've got a young man called Isaac, whose family run a business, and they were in their business able to buy a refrigerated van as part of the business. And Isaac has Isaac's Cool Cars. He's a food delivery business. So a bit of difference from $50 with vases to probably a $50,000 van and everything in between. So, you know, but again, that's a consideration. There's no point saying I'm going to have this business that's costing me 20 grand to start up if we've got $200. We've got to be realistic. But there are ways also about looking for the resources. And so things like grants, service clubs, looking for those sorts of connections can be really good in that area too. And again, the people to assist. If you haven't got somebody alongside you, you know, who can you invite in? How can you even pay to bring somebody in if that's what's needed as well? The next bit about, you know, the considerations, the person's stamina will help you understand the work hours. So we've talked about morning people, afternoon people. Some people it's better to have 4 short shifts. Other people say I want 2 long days. These are really important considerations. And again, family and the person themselves will be the people to really shed a lot of light on that. But they're important considerations to consider and to how it can work. And again, with customised employment, you can create that. What we would ask you, or think of considering though, is what is typical for that workforce normally. So we want this to be, you know, if we're talking in SRV language, what's the culturally valued analogue? So what is typical and normal? So, for example, if you've got a lawn business, most tradies, they're up and out. They're out on the job, you know, in the morning, 8 o'clock, work through the afternoon. There's no point having, well, I'm not saying no point, but to make it look the same and to be the same, what is a typical work day for someone doing that business? What are their outfits? What are their equipment? We consider all these sorts of things so that it stands alone as a highly valued product. When you look at all the videos and the resources, there is nowhere that says disability. It's irrelevant. This is a standalone product of a quality product or service. So of course there's considerations because of someone's disability, but that doesn't have to be on the front page. So, you know, these are the sort of things that we would encourage you to really, really think about and take time to think about that. But after you've gone through these things, what are some of the ideas that are already floating? Some people will know straight away what they want to do. Someone like Jack, he was born to do this. He's loved it from the start. Other people will say, I actually don't want to use my passion as my work. I want to keep that separate. That's cool too. That's fine. It's the person's. But maybe what can we take from that passion? What's one of the skills or a focus from that passion that could be used? But, you know, again, some people will come. We knew Tom would be great doing lawns. We just knew there was a lot about it. The rhythm of lawns, the fact that he wanted to be outside, he didn't have to talk to a lot of people, the satisfaction from seeing a job completed in a short period of time. Those were the sorts of things. So we'd sort of done our own discovery. But otherwise, we were still open to more thinking. You know, animals are something that people often say, there's a love of animals. And so dog walking is one that comes up all the time. That might be the perfect enterprise, but it could be the start of some other thinking. So again, dreaming big, thinking big, but keeping open minds in this early stage. And let's be realistic about what levels of funding does the person have access to. Some people have in that grey zone of not having any funding. Other people have NDIS plans, and I'll touch on this now. But that's relevant too. If you're needing someone to work alongside, how is that going to be funded? Do they have access to other funding, or can they self-fund? But all those sorts of things need to be considered. We certainly know that people working in this space, if we're talking NDIS, self-managing is the way to go. It's much easier if you can. And this is our experience in South Australia. People who are plan managed with the right support coordinator and the right LAC, that can work too. It doesn't tend to work with agency managed people. So and sometimes I've seen people come to these sessions who've decided to switch their form of managing because of this. So they'll say, you would be really happy being plan managed, but actually I can see the benefit, and they'll put in a review to switch. Now that's just some of the thinking that And this is specifically if we're talking NDIS. So what I've learned from this project so far, we've had quite a few meetings with people in the NDIA. We decided at the beginning we were going to produce a little pamphlet that people could take along to their planning meetings to say, I want a micro enterprise and I need money here, 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 and really lay it out. We got told pretty clearly from the NDIA, don't tell us our job. Don't tell us, we don't want to know about line items, we don't want to know about numbers, but tell us what your employment goal is. They have stressed that time and time again. Have an employment goal, and have an employment goal from a young age. Think about it in regards to part-time jobs while you're at school, all that sort of thing. Employment goals, make it general is my advice. Certainly in the early days, my goal is to explore what might be a suitable work option for me. I want to explore my gifts and talents and see how that can be part of society. Make it general, but have it there. Show people you want to work. And I think that's the key, because otherwise there'll be an assumption you don't, sadly. So put it front and centre that there's a strong employment goal. And if you've got a plan already and you've got existing core, if you feel you can justify that your core, the goals that you set, you can use that flexibly now. So some people will start with discovery using their existing plan. Other people will say, look, we've got nothing in the right categories, or we've got a meeting coming up, so we're going to put in a whole new plan. But don't feel you've got to wait. If you've got money there, often the money's allocated because you've got, shopping on a Monday, and you've got speech therapy on a Tuesday, and you've got a coffee date on a Wednesday, and you've got your support worker coming on a Thursday to do cleaning. So you sort of go, well, I'm using my budget. But what can change? What could change? How could that work look different to bring work into it? Could we condense the support worker doing the shopping and whatever? Could we make that all one day and open up? So you don't necessarily have to even get more money in your plan. You might just be using it differently. And what I've personally noticed, certainly in my son's case, but I've noticed it with other people, is that when work starts to come into people's lives, especially meaningful work, and they're enjoying it, I've seen all the allied health stuff drop off. Less need or desire to go to the OT. You're actually getting your OT often in your work in your workplace. Speech. I look at my son who now confidently uses a phone, and he wouldn't do that a few years back. Now we were practicing in a room with him using phones. Well, guess what? He's got it on the job now. So we see this shift. So just remember that these things can change. So think about the existing plan, but if you are going for a new plan and you want micro enterprise in it, these are some of the categories, and the next slide expands a bit more on that. But these are some of the categories that you can request funding for. It is in their literature. It is embedded heavily through the NDIA about micro enterprise, about customised jobs and work. Discovery is referred to. It's all under, so these are some of the areas. Community and social participation. SLES, not called SLES now, it's under the finding and keeping a job, I think. And again, this changes, so this is our experience to date, but you need to keep up to date with what's going on there. But you can apply for funding in areas like the managing life stages, so certainly leaving school and going in, and leaving otherwise even, we get people of all ages who come along and go, I'm wanting a change, I've heard about this. So transitioning out of an ADE into something like this might require additional funding and support. But these are some of the areas. And I strongly encourage you to look at examples that are there. There are lots of examples now. It's exciting to see. Micro enterprise stories are bobbing up everywhere. And again, as I said, if you go to the NDA's pages, the portal, and type in micro enterprise, you will see stories of people who are having their own micro enterprise. And take those with you. Politely take them with you, just to remind people. This is something that I've been inspired by. I've heard about these stories, and this is something that I'd like to explore. So, taking examples, where I've got there the MEP quote, if someone is wanting to bring in someone like a job coach to work alongside to support the family, then there are different categories I'll show you here that again can be funded. But I think the main thing is that you tell the person that you're meeting with what you want assistance for. So under the MEP framework that CLP have, everybody has a PA. Now that's the equivalent of a support worker, so coming out of core. But the way the MEP works is that we don't encourage people to convert an existing support worker. So you might say, this person knows my son really well, knows how to do his peg feed, he knows how to do his seizure medication, he knows that, all of this. That's great, and that's a great support worker, and you don't want to lose that. But when we're talking about a highly valued product or service, we want somebody who knows that skill, okay? So what we would say, and we talk about Fleur, she started off the business with flowers. Now, I might have been a brilliant support worker for Fleur, say, but if I'd been asked to help her with her business, I might have put sour sops in her flowers, or I might have used flowers that didn't last a week, and I didn't really know how to arrange them. So her product or service that I was supporting her with wouldn't have been high quality. Whereas she recruited a florist, someone who had floristry skills, and she was then taught how to help and to support Fleur if she had seizures. So we believe a lot of those life skills or support skills can be taught to a PA, but they need to come with the skills of the job. So again, artists. So I was talking to Maureen. So Freya's art teacher, she's an artist. She's not a support worker who just thinks, let's just do some, mindful colouring together. She's an artist. So we're talking about, and look for the top. Go for someone who's really out there. And you just got to trust me on this. There are people out there that want to do this work, that are great people who come with the skills. I remember when we decided with Tom that he was going to have this business, I thought, how are we going to find somebody that wants to work 2 days a week with him doing this? I just couldn't believe it. You know what? They're there. They're there. We had choice. He's had 3 PAs. One was 3 years, another was short term because it was between Tom and, what's his name? That gorgeous man that lives at Byron Bay, the actor. Hemsworth, yeah. Sorry, it was Tom or Hemsworth. Sorry. No, she actually works in films and does the greening for films, and it was a role supporting him. So anyway, we lost him. And his current PA 3 years. So what I'm saying is there are good people out there, and there are people with the skills. So look for the skills when you are looking to support someone. So these are the sort of things that we talk about too. But these are the categories that you might want to jot down to look for. And if you're bringing someone on to work alongside you, you can use your capacity building to help you work in these areas. And obviously, as I said, everyone has a PA using core funding. That's the model that CLP use. And we like to say that they support the person to do the roles they can't do yet. And I always add yet. Someone taught me that years ago. Don't say the things they can't do, because why should we define that person's capacity? And so I always add yet when I say, well, Tom can't drive yet. Because he can't at the moment, but I'm not saying he won't. So we say this and honestly the growth that a lot of people experience, that's proven as well. So increased capacity through having the right PA. What we also do, and what I haven't really touched on, do I touch on it? No. Is again, under this model, one thing I haven't said is that under the MEP project you have a consultant that supports to bring all of this together with the person. We have a PA that supports the person on the job. But the other part that people have in their enterprise is an enterprise management group. And that's bringing together people who freely give their time. They're not there in a paid role. There are things like, and we'll again talk about this in the afternoon. So, and this is something you can do. You can bring alongside people with you. And as a parent, I strongly encourage you to do that. to have someone that you trust and value and your person trusts and value to bring alongside and to share, to bounce off each other, to share the workload, and to be there if you're not there. Because a few years ago, I woke up one night and I thought, if I didn't wake up tomorrow, I realised Tom couldn't go to work. And I thought, that's actually just not fair. It's not fair on him because work is his most important thing. So we have a small group of people, an enterprise management group, that meet not as often as we used to. In the early days, probably meeting every 6 weeks and coming together, divvying up roles and really knowing the vision of that person and being clear on how they can support that person so that if mum or dad isn't there, this can still go beyond. And that's actually the goal, is that this goes beyond us as family, I think. So having an enterprise management group and thinking about the roles that might be useful, the skills and roles of people you invite in. So if you've got a business where there's a lot of transactions, you might want someone with some bookkeeping skills or some accounting skills. Who can you ask? Oh, well actually, so-and-so's auntie is a bookkeeper and done a bit of work. They might be interested. Maybe we could ask that. Oh, our neighbour, they used to own their own cafe, and I'm looking at a business that's making biscuits. Maybe they've got some useful information they could support me with that, because they might know about food regulations and things like that. So think about again the business, the enterprise focus, and what roles that you might need to invite people in to help you with that. And that's really important. I've found it really useful to have this when I'm looking at recruiting, because I think I mentioned to the others, I'm a bit of a soft touch. So, I remember the first time we recruited for a PA for Tom, and the first guy that came along had a really sad story. And I wanted just to employ him, just to help him, but it wasn't going to be the right person for the job. So luckily, having an enterprise management group member there was like, absolutely not. This is not the right person. So having someone else to bounce that off and those ideas is really, really important. So that's something that, again, you can take, whilst you don't have CLP, you can take from their model. And one of the videos in your pack is the 4 steps that the Micro Enterprise Project use. So if you're wanting to go beyond Think Today and look at a bit more, it goes beyond discovery. It talks about exploration and all the 4 steps. So it talks about those sorts of things and building together an enterprise management group. And apart from funding, this has been going and happening always. So people have been doing this. Families have been helping their people, their young person or family member, to have a micro enterprise. So families, you often see that will bring in a person into an existing workplace or work together. Got an example here with Donna and Freya. Valued Lives in WA, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They have a big focus on micro enterprise, and they have a national registry. So it's not always kept up. I've noticed there's some people in there that don't exist anymore, but it's a really good spot to look at. So it's Valued Lives and it's the National Micro Enterprise Registry. And you'll see in that, in a lot of them, they've got links that you can click on. And there are examples of sisters working alongside, mother and daughters, fathers and sons. So again, this has been happening. So families have been doing this and will continue to do this without providers, without paid support. So we'll continue to do this. And there, of course, are other organisations working in this space. In South Australia, under the same grant that we received, the ILC grant, RED is an organisation in South Australia, Rapid Enterprise Development. They help people with micro enterprise. They use a different framework. Theirs is very much about going to a workshop for the day and coming away with an idea and then being supported for about 6 months. So that's that organisation. Valued Lives have a big presence with micro enterprise. So again, a lot of resources if you look at their side. Right to Work in New South Wales, some of these you might be familiar with. Last year in Adelaide in October, we had a one-day micro enterprise summit, and some of these organisations came over, and we've collaborated since, stayed in touch, and in fact about to do some work now of just seeing what people are doing in other states, and I'm about to produce a newsletter touching on what some of these other organisations have been doing to support people who have enterprise. Ability West in Dubbo is another organisation who works in this space. LMC Group in Victoria, they, I don't know, has anyone heard of any of these? Yeah, great. So they're doing some great stuff, and I think Everyone Can Work, is that up here? Yeah, everyone, that's the national. And there's the Be Your Own Boss, isn't it, which is up here in Queensland. And so I've sort of, it's great. And if you know of other people or providers that are working with microenterprise, please let me know, because I need, that's been part of my role, is finding who's doing it. And of course you'll get individuals, people who take this on as well, who want to be a job coach or support people. So there's individuals doing this area. There's incubator spaces or hubs. Some people will use those if they don't have their own resources as well. So this is some of the way people will do this work, is that they'll go to an area to use joint resources or to collaborate with others. There was a system called NEASE, a federally funded system. It's now called Self-Employment Assistance Program. It's different than microenterprise. It tends to be for people who need just a bit of business support often. But it can be the right thing for some people. And again, it's about knowing what's out there and seeing where it fits with you. Sometimes registered training officers, RTOs, will help people using their self-employment assistance funding. And of course there's grants and philanthropic funding, so that's changed a bit. Since the NDIS, I think a lot of grants and philanthropic funding's changed a bit, but it is, each state has their own. We have some organisations in South Australia, and I'm sure there's some up here. Local councils can be quite supportive if you're needing startup funds or specifically equipment. I know a few of our enterprise owners have appealed to service clubs in the early days and been quite specific about why they wanted to work and how the funding would help. And that's been great. In fact, one it was a service club, a Lions Club, provided some funding for one of the enterprise owners. And the proviso was if the business didn't last more than 6 months, the equipment would go back, and they wanted a report. But they were so excited and happy to support someone to work that they actually have come back twice to CLP to say, does anyone else want any funding? Because we want to support people who want to work. And that's been a really strong message to us. So there are a lot of people who want to support people to work. And I wouldn't be here today in my work role, or even as a parent with a son with a successful enterprise, if it hadn't been for inspiration from these organisations, from Belonging Matters, Imagine More, Crew, Resourcing Inclusive Community. I should put Purple Orange up there, which is actually the South Australian. That's very remiss of me. And they are the capacity building organisations that support people and families to keep believing, to dreaming big, and to learn from each other. I mean, it's the people that go before us that give us so much advice and strength, motivation, and it can be the difference between which pathway you take, I think. So I regularly look at the resources, really excited with the new Why Employment Matters book, and reflect on them at different times too. But, thank you so much for having me today, and I hope there's something, even if it's one thing that you take away, but hopefully there's more. I've got my details here. I'm more than happy to ever speak to people on an individual basis. If you want to call me or look at our website or reach out, please do those evaluations. Yeah.
If you can, thank you, Helen.